In 1793, Marie Antoinette stood before the guillotine. She had once been the Queen of France, a woman surrounded by diamonds, palaces, towering hairstyles, and unimaginable luxury. But by the end of her life, she was no longer seen as a queen. She was seen as a symbol of everything the people hated. To her enemies, she was selfish, foreign, spoiled, and dangerously out of touch. To others, she was a young woman trapped inside a role she never truly chose. So how did an Austrian princess become the most hated woman in France? And did Marie Antoinette really deserve the brutal fate that waited for her? Before we begin, subscribe for more stories of power, betrayal, and scandal. This is not just the story of a queen. It is the story of how a country in crisis found one woman to blame for everything. Marie Antoinette was not born to be loved by France. She was born to be useful. In 1755, she entered the world as the 15th child of Empress Maria Theresa of Austria, one of the most powerful women in Europe. From the beginning, Marie's future was not really her own. Royal daughters were political tools. Their marriages created alliances, ended rivalries, and strengthened empires. And for Marie Antoinette, that meant France. As a child, she was remembered as charming, musical, and sweet-natured, but she was not considered a brilliant student. She struggled with reading, writing, and languages, including French, the language of the country she was expected to one day help represent. But none of that stopped the arrangement. At just 14 years old, Marie Antoinette was married to Louis Auguste, the heir to the French throne. Before she even arrived in France, she was remade. Her clothes were changed. Her manners were corrected. Even her appearance was adjusted to match French expectations. The girl from Austria was being transformed into a future Queen of France. But Versailles was not a fairy tale. It was a palace of rules, rituals, gossip, and judgment. Every movement was watched. Every outfit was discussed. Every mistake could become a scandal. And Marie Antoinette was about to discover that in France, being queen did not mean being free. By the age of 19, Marie Antoinette was Queen of France. But her marriage was far from the romantic image people might imagine. Her husband, Louis XVI, was quiet, awkward, and deeply uncomfortable in the social world of Versailles. He preferred hunting, reading, and practical hobbies over court life. Marie was different. She was lively, playful, and drawn to music, parties, fashion, and conversation. From the beginning, they seemed mismatched, but the real scandal was not their personalities. It was their bedroom. For years, the royal marriage was not consummated. And in a court obsessed with heirs, bloodlines, and appearances, that silence became impossible to ignore. Europe began to gossip. Was something wrong with the king? Did he not desire his wife? Was the queen being neglected? The whispers became so embarrassing that Marie Antoinette's own brother, Emperor Joseph II, eventually came to France to intervene. Whatever he said, it worked. Soon after, Marie Antoinette became pregnant and the pressure to produce an heir finally began to ease, but the damage had already started. The young queen had learned that nothing in Versailles stayed private, not her clothing, not her friendships, not even her marriage. And as the years passed, the gossip would only become more dangerous. Because Marie Antoinette was no longer just a foreign princess trying to survive the French court. She was becoming a public obsession, and France was watching her every move. With her marriage finally producing children, Marie Antoinette could have stepped into a more stable role as queen. But by then, her reputation was already becoming difficult to control. At Versailles, Image was everything, and Marie Antoinette understood the power of image better than almost anyone. She became famous for her dresses, her jewelry, her parties, and especially her hair. Her hairstyles grew higher and more elaborate, decorated with feathers, jewels, and even miniature objects. One of the most famous designs reportedly included a model ship created to celebrate a French naval victory. To the nobles around her, it was fashion. To the public, it looked like madness. As France's financial problems worsened, Marie Antoinette's lifestyle became impossible to ignore. She spent enormous amounts of money on clothing and decoration. She transformed her private estate, the Petit Trianon, into a world of gardens, luxury, and escape. And while she may have seen it as a private refuge from the suffocating rituals of Versailles, many ordinary people saw something else. A queen playing make-believe while the country suffered. Soon, her enemies gave her a brutal nickname, Madame Deficit. It suggested that Marie Antoinette herself was responsible for France's financial ruin. That was not really true. France's debt had been caused by years of war, political failure, and a deeply unfair tax system that placed the heaviest burden on the poor. But Marie Antoinette became the perfect symbol of everything people resented. She was foreign, she was rich, she was visible, and she seemed completely separated from the hunger and hardship outside the palace gates. What made the situation more complicated was that Marie Antoinette was not simply cruel or heartless. She gave to charity, supported poor families, and sometimes showed real compassion. But generosity was not enough to save her image, because in politics, perception can be more powerful than truth. And the public had already decided what kind of queen she was. By the time France was sinking deeper into debt, Marie Antoinette's image had become almost impossible to repair. Every dress became evidence, every party became an insult, every rumor became believable, and then came the scandal that would damage her reputation more than almost anything else, the diamond necklace affair. It was a bizarre and complicated fraud involving an extremely expensive diamond necklace, ambitious social climbers, forged letters, and people desperate to gain influence at court. Marie Antoinette had no real part in the crime. But that did not matter. Her name became attached to the scandal, and for many people, that was enough. The public already believed she was wasteful, selfish, and obsessed with luxury. So when a story appeared involving diamonds, deception, and royal influence, it seemed to confirm everything they already thought about her. Even when she was innocent, she looked guilty. That was the danger of her reputation. Once people had decided what kind of queen she was, every new accusation seemed easy to believe. And the rumors did not stop there. There were whispers about her private life, including claims that she had been romantically involved with the Swedish Count Axel von Fersen. Whether the relationship was a deep friendship, a romance, or something more has been debated for centuries. But in her own time, the suggestion of an affair only made her image more explosive. To her enemies, she was not just extravagant, she was immoral, foreign, untrustworthy, a queen whose loyalty to France could be questioned. Then there was the most famous phrase attached to her name: "Let them eat cake." According to legend, when Marie Antoinette was told the people had no bread, she coldly replied that they should eat cake instead. The problem is that she probably never said it. The phrase had been circulating before she was even queen, and there is no solid evidence that it came from her. But the truth did not matter, because the sentence captured exactly how people wanted to see her. a queen so detached from ordinary suffering that hunger itself became invisible to her. In reality, Marie Antoinette was more complicated than the monster created by gossip. But France was angry, and angry people do not always look for the truth. Sometimes they look for a face to blame. And Marie Antoinette had become that face. While Marie Antoinette's reputation was collapsing, France itself was reaching a breaking point. The country was drowning in debt. Years of expensive wars, poor financial decisions, and an unfair tax system had pushed the kingdom into crisis. But the burden did not fall equally. The wealthiest people in France, including much of the nobility and clergy, were often protected from the heaviest taxes. The poor were not. For ordinary people, life became harder and harder. Bread prices rose, harvests failed, families struggled to survive. And while hunger spread through the streets, the royal family remained behind palace walls. This was the dangerous contrast that destroyed Marie Antoinette's image. It was not only what she spent, it was when she spent it. Every gown, every jewel, every party, and every detail of Versailles seemed more insulting because the country outside was suffering. By 1789, frustration had turned into open defiance. The Estates General was called to deal with the financial emergency, but the representatives of the common people were tired of being ignored. They formed their own assembly and demanded a new political future for France. The old system was beginning to crack. Then, on July 14th, 1789, a crowd stormed the Bastille, a fortress prison in Paris. It became one of the defining moments of the French Revolution. From that point forward, the monarchy was no longer untouchable. The people had discovered their power, and the anger that had been building for years now had a target. The king was seen as weak, the government was seen as corrupt, but Marie Antoinette was seen as something even more dangerous, the face of royal arrogance, the woman who seemed to dance while France starved. And soon, the people would no longer stay outside the palace gates. The revolution had begun in Paris, but soon it arrived at Marie Antoinette's front door. On October 5th, 1789, thousands of women marched toward Versailles. They were angry, hungry, exhausted. Bread had become too expensive, and many families were struggling to survive. To them, the palace was not just a royal home, it was a symbol of everything unfair about France. Inside Versailles, the royal family was surrounded by luxury. Outside, the people demanded food. As the crowd grew larger and more furious, the situation became dangerous. By the next morning, protesters had forced their way into the palace. Marie Antoinette was suddenly no longer protected by ceremony, titles, or palace walls. The anger of the country had found her. For a moment, her life was in serious danger. Eventually, the royal family was escorted away from Versailles and taken to Paris. It was a turning point. The monarchy had not been destroyed yet, but it had been humiliated. The king and queen were no longer distant figures ruling from a golden palace. They were now prisoners of public anger. And for Marie Antoinette, the message was clear. The people were no longer afraid of the crown. And once that fear disappeared, so did the safety that had protected her all her life. After the royal family was taken to Paris, there was still a small chance that the monarchy could survive. They were watched closely, but they were not yet completely destroyed. Some people still hoped that Louis XVI might work with the revolution. Others believed the royal family could accept a new political order and remain as constitutional monarchs. But Marie Antoinette did not trust the revolution, and the revolution did not trust her. Behind the scenes, plans began to form. With help from supporters, including the Swedish Count Axel von Fersen, the royal family prepared to escape Paris and reach loyalist forces near the border. The plan required secrecy, discipline, and convincing disguises. But the royal family was not good at pretending to be ordinary people. During the journey, they moved slowly, attracted attention, and failed to blend in. Then, near the town of Varennes, Louis was recognized. The escape was over. The family was arrested and brought back to Paris under humiliation and suspicion. For Marie Antoinette, the failed escape was devastating. To the public, it seemed to confirm their worst fears. The king and queen had not accepted the revolution. They had been pretending, negotiating on the surface while secretly trying to flee. Whatever trust remained between the people and the monarchy was now almost gone. Marie Antoinette's image became even darker. She was no longer just seen as wasteful or out of touch. She was seen as dangerous, a foreign queen who might betray France to save herself. Soon, the royal family's privileges were stripped away, their movements were restricted, their enemies grew bolder, and the country that once bowed before Marie Antoinette was now preparing to judge her. After the failed escape, the royal family's fate became darker with every passing month. The monarchy was abolished. Louis XVI was put on trial, and in 1793, the King of France was executed by guillotine. Marie Antoinette was now no longer a queen. She was a widow, a prisoner, and one of the most hated women in the country. For 9 months, she waited in captivity as the revolution grew more violent around her. The period known as the Reign of Terror was beginning, and France was no longer interested in mercy. Eventually, Marie Antoinette was brought to trial. She was accused of treason, conspiracy against the revolution, and crimes against France. But the most painful accusation was far more personal. Revolutionary officials pressured her young son into making horrifying claims against his own mother. For Marie Antoinette, that accusation was not just political, it was devastating. Still, the outcome of the trial was never really in doubt. France had already decided what she represented: luxury, betrayal, foreign influence, royal corruption. She was found guilty and sentenced to death. On the day of her execution, Marie Antoinette wore white, the color of mourning for queens of France. She walked to the guillotine stripped of power, wealth, and title. The woman who had once lived behind the golden gates of Versailles was now led through the streets before the people who had come to despise her, and moments later, her life came to an end.